These models, they're outrageous. Morning, everybody. Do I have CPAP ring around the face? Well, I got this yesterday. The book by Dennis Prince and Andrew Yanchus on the Aurora monster scenes. And of course, you know that if you saw last night's show. Well, anyway, I just got off the phone with Andy and get a bunch of information to make a re-edit of the Strombecker video, which, like I said, I'm waiting to see if some more information comes my way. I got a bunch of new images, but I'm going to hold off on uploading it in case there might be some more on the way. And so, of course, I'm still working on other videos at the same time. And then Andy had asked, did Dennis send you the book? And of course, Dennis and Andy wrote it. And I was like, no, it hadn't showed up yet. And not 20 minutes after we hung up, my wife comes with the mail. And that was the only thing in the mail was the book. But I thought I would, I don't know what time this was, 8 o'clock in the evening, something like that. And maybe a little, anyway, I start reading the book, and I never put it down. I burned through the whole thing in one sitting. I as I probably told you guys, I wasn't real big on the monster scene stuff. In fact, I don't think as a kid I ever built any of them. But a good story is a good story. And now a lot of my friends built them, so I saw all these things. I remember seeing them at the stores, and part of it was nostalgia, just because I remembered. I'm some of the things were crystal clear. A few others a little vaguer on, but to find out why the things did what they did, how things came out, was like, okay, that makes sense. And as I was reading the book, I'm like, oh, there's so many things I need to say in the morning show, but what I really need to say is, and I'm not trying to pump some books, but if you built these things or you're into kit model history, this book is an incredible resource, because there's a lot more than that in there than just the monster scenes. It gets into what's going on in the company with the management and everything. But I knew that, because I'd done the Aurora history, I knew that the in '71 the toys got labeled torture devices, and people were picketing the company. But he actually has photographs of that stuff. I mean, it's one thing to hear that the angry moms were out picketing Nabisco headquarters, which they didn't realize was in New York. But then it's another thing to actually see photographs of these angry women out there, and one of the things I didn't realize is that they actually went and got the people who were protesting, went into the National Organization of Women, and he actually has a little bit of an interview with the woman that was running the show back then. And what happened was apparently the angry moms felt that they didn't have enough horsepower by themselves, and of course you bring attention to your plight by getting, basically, I hate to say professional agitators, but people who know what they're doing when it comes to protesting, and have the ability to get the media out there and everything. And there were actually real protests and stuff. And so the lady from the National Organization of Women was like, well, now this cartoon I absolutely remember where the girl's screaming for help. I'm like, it's New York. And Vampirella's like, oh, it's New York. No one will come to her aid. I'm like, oh my God, I remember seeing that at the store. I don't remember the store having the display, but I do remember that cartoon being up there. Uh, not to blame anybody. They kind of played it every. I'm a kid from Florida, and I'm like, see, that's why I don't live in New York. It's because that's just the way it is. And here's some more of the protesting, and the lady from the Now gang that won't help go after him. And you read this, and you think to yourself, okay, wait a minute. If you don't like the items, don't buy it. But that wasn't enough. They actually had to we have to stop it from being manufactured. I'm like, probably going to catch some heat for this, but Karens before there were Karens. Or Karens before we called them Karens. They were so innocent. There was no internet or anything. I mean, you think about this: the generation before, and after reading a lot of the comments you guys have left, and other books and other stuff, I kind of understand a little bit about the generational disconnect, because you listen to kids that were born in the 40s or earlier. And somewhere in the comment sections a couple of days ago, somebody was talking about, like my parents would give us, for the old, it might have been on the Strombecker, because they were talking about the wooden Strombecker kits, the solids. And they said, my parents would give us double-edged razor blades, and we would tape up one end so, we could put our finger on it, and we would shape the wood. I'm thinking, you're giving 10-year-olds a double-edged razor blade and some tape, and so go turn your block of wood into a model airplane right there at the kitchen table. And 20 years later, 30 years later, moms are street marching because they don't like the subject matter. It's a torture device. And that's the difference in a generation. But the guys who were designing these toys and who were given the okay were the ones who probably, at some point, had done that kind of stuff. And we're like, what's the problem? We don't get it. And they made an effort to play it down with cartoonish and playful instruction sheets. And of course, the victim, that was probably the single biggest thing, was calling the girl the victim. But the story with the girl at the expo, I mean, there's just okay. In '71, they're going to have all these things out at the HIAA, was a Hobby Industry Association, whatever it is, blah blah blah. And I mean, hold on. Okay, you just can't make that one up. Okay, this was from a newspaper article that was bashing the toys. Our guillotine is not only gruesome, it's educational. That should be a T-shirt. You get a T-shirt with an Aurora logo, and one of the characters, our guillotine is not only gruesome, it's educational. Today, those would fly off the table. But anyway, so they have this beautiful model, who's a professional model, and she's there with the Aurora set. And in 1971 at the HIA meeting in Chicago, that's the Hobby Industry Association of America. Okay. If you guys built these, you know this. When you put, we've all built figurines probably at some point of some type, and a lot of times, that when they make the molds, they need to hide the seam lines as best they can. And when you're dealing with the human body, a lot of times the very best place to hide a seam line is the waistline, because that's where the shirt and the trousers, the shirt and the dress or whatever will meet. Okay, so they deliberately had it where they met the seam line. Well, when they had the pendulum with the right out of Edgar Allan Poe, it just so happened that of course and they wanted to be posable, so they had a couple of different arms they could snap on and snap off. So this girl, this beautiful young lady they've hired as a professional model, showing people that oh look, you put her in the pendulum and you can cut her in half and pop the body in half. That was not why they did it that way, but that's the way she was showing people. Where people are just horrified. Oh, look, you can chop their arm off. Comes right off. Yeah, they really should have had a briefing before the show. They got all kinds of bad press, and the guys at Nabisco freaked out. And the thing was, it did sell well, but that's just one of 100 good stories in there. And I be honest, for something that I didn't personally build, the book was, like I said, it was so interesting. I almost considered just reading the whole book. You just read a chapter a day or something. Thunderclaps shook the night air, and an unyielding downpour soaked in New York's Long Island. Strangely, the core. Hold on, if I'm going to do this, let me just do it right. Can you hear me now? By the way, one of the characters involved here with the monster scenes, I kid you not, name is Mike Myers. It just gets better. Monsters are good for you. Silverstein's and others at Aurora had anticipated the potential for concerns being raised that monster models might have a negative impact on young hobbyists. At the start, few believed the monster idea could really merit an entire series, but just in case steps were taken to address any public hesitation. In a proactive move to head off anxieties and avert any backlash, Aurora commissioned a psychological study focused on the efforts of the monster toys on children. The subsequent findings from reputable authorities concluded that movie monsters actually performed a valuable service for the child. Aurora included this statement of approval boldly with their brochure, assuring all that the verdict was monsters are okay for kids. So these that's the kind of just, gosh, this is. I mean, it starts off like apparently it was raining cats and dogs when they had their meeting with Chuck Diker about starting it, because it literally starts off. It was a dark and stormy night. The angry sky was full of bloated clouds that let loose torrents of rain and hurled crackling bolts of lightning. Thunderclaps shook the night air, while an unyielding downpour soaked New York's Long Island. Strangely, the core of the storm's fury seemed to hang above the Aurora Plastics Factory, located at 44 Cherry Valley Road, just off the Hempstead Turnpike. Could the storm have a motive? Perhaps to disrupt the goings-on in the building below. I mean, it very cleverly starts off with like an Edgar Allan Poe novel. And, oh my gosh, I could keep showing you pictures, but I don't want to get into any copyright violations here. But there's just, it gets in a little bit about the whole thing with Abe Shikes and Joe Giammarino. How basically, eventually they had their differences. It talks about a little bit about the downfall of the company, but also a bunch of stuff they didn't make, which I plan to do a video on Aurora, the unmade models. And Andy gave me a bunch of photographs. The stuff they didn't make is every bit as cool, if not cooler in some cases, than the stuff they did make. And he touches a little bit on that in here. And it was such a good read. There's about 120, 137, let's see, gets into the low budget remakes. There's 136, 37, 144 pages before you get to the end of the primary story, which makes up a little over half the book. And then, go back here. And then the rest of it's beautiful photographs, technical drawings, and you really start to realize they don't call them design engineers for nothing. You start realizing what goes into making a kit model, and it is, as much as I knew or know about kit model making, you got to remember this is all in 3 dimensions, right? So as much as I know about model making, I didn't really appreciate how much effort goes in to creating a model, at least a decent one. And now here is something that apparently didn't make. I think this was going to be their King Kong, and he was going to be scaled up to, like, I think he said 16 inches or something. And I'm thinking, man, that would have gone perfect with my Polar Lights Godzilla. But there's a whole story behind the scenes, the prehistoric scenes, and the politics behind the characters being made, and the decision-making process, and the company not wanting to put enough money in. And there's so many things that intertwine. And this book takes a very complicated story and helps it to flow very well. And sick toys for children make a sick society. Oh, that's a load of crap. I'm gonna go a direction I don't normally go here for a minute. And if you guys disagree with me, by all means, make your arguments below. But one could make the argument that the sickest toy you could ever make would be wartime military hardware. You know, Revell faced this exact same crap. Revell was run by the Glazers, who were, I mean, Royal, Lou Glazer's wife, was a Berkeley graduate. And Lou and Royal were known for they had a family, and they wanted to make educational toys. And they caught some flack about the same time about, why do you keep making military hardware? And Lou was and Royal very upfront about it. Look, we would love to make educational toys and nothing else, but that isn't what sells. Let's just cut to the chase here, shall we? Boys like stuff. Boys like stuff that goes boom. Okay? It's something in the male psyche. If it makes noise, if it blows stuff up, if it's big and heavy, we love it. Tanks, planes. I mean, it's just, things are what they are. And if you're going to make kit plastic models, you got to make what sells. Sports cars sell because they're fast and powerful. Hot rods sell because they're fast and powerful. Tanks sell because they're big and menacing, kind of a man-made dinosaur. Airplanes because they're fast and powerful and noisy, and so on and so on and so forth. Big, noisy, powerful, preferably dangerous. And now that sells. It is what it is. And then you get, I understand moms that are concerned about their kids, but getting back to my point, it could be said that the military hardware is, you know, these monsters are fiction. They're from movies. Why do you think kids like monster movies, and apparently younger kids? Because it's part of the amygdala response to want to be startled, be scared. Humans like to that's why people ride roller coasters. They want to have the crap scared out of them, because it's part of who we are. It's actually healthy, because it keeps that part of the brain alive. You guys are probably familiar with the amygdala response, the fight or flight. And, you know, and it goes back to the caveman. If the caveman's walking along and he hears something rustling in the bushes, he either grabs his spear, bares his teeth, and faces it, or he hauls boogie, right? Gets the heck out of dodge. That's the amygdala response, and it's an important part of how our brain works. And when you live in a society that's completely devoid of any threats. Now, have you ever seen the movie Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes? Yeah, the world's become a sad Brady Bunch impression of itself. So now to look back on it, I completely understand why the Aurora figures were so popular. Absolutely. And one of the guys has a big section of the book talks about how he was never scared of the kaiju monsters, but he was always scared of the classic monsters. And I was the exact opposite. I was never scared of the Dracula or Frankenstein. I was always scared of the kaiju. but everybody has a different response to different things. And he talks about how his brother had a couple of things on the shelf and it terrified him as he would try to go to sleep at night. And I was like, I have a buddy. I used to stay over at his house when I was about, I don't know, 8, 9 years old. His whole top of his whole shelf was covered with war models. And the one that really creeped me out was the Godzilla one, because again, as a little kid, and now I've got the biggest one you can get, and I'll buy anything with the G on it. And some people have said, well, it's therapy, man. You're just getting used to it. And I realized this book talks about how kids building the models, because they had control over it. Control of any type gives you a feeling of, well, control, and helps you get over your anxiety about these things. And I realized, holy crap, I'm damn near 60 years old. I'm building these things because being in control, it makes you not only not fear it, but then you begin to like it. And it's all part of how the complex part of our human gelatinous interskull bulb works. And I don't think these whining mothers could have been more wrong. Andy and these guys are absolutely right that this stuff. I mean, the big problem to get into the book was the misogynist, the seemingly misogynistic way it was represented, because the girl was just labeled the victim, and that was probably the single biggest thing. And then he gets all into the vampirella thing. How for as much work as went into this thing, you're like, how could they make this particular mistake? But back then you didn't just shoot someone an email. You gave someone instructions, they went off and did their thing, and there were some wires that got crossed, and the book talks about that, and this isn't what we were talking about. No, it's too late. And molds that were 90% done that didn't get finished, which he'd never seen happen before. It really, just if you're, I swear, I would be perfectly happy. I'm not going to, because probably some kind of copyright violation, but I'd be perfectly happy every morning just to read a chapter out of this book. It was a fun read. And I love Thomas Graham's books. They're extremely informative. But since Andy was there, he has a lot in here that just really cuts to the chase and gives you more of a I was there kind of feel to it. So to Dennis Prince and Andy Yanchus and all the good folks who worked at Aurora to give the monster scenes to a couple of generations of kids, Max's models, salute. And now that I've gone on for over 20 minutes, I will let you guys go. And good Lord willing and the river don't rise, we'll see you tonight.